So genetic engineering has been with us for decades, but now we're hearing the catchphrase gene editing. In your opinion, what are the important ethical issues around gene editing?
Well, let's first divide it up into categories because gene editing or genome editing is something that can be used either to, for example, change plants and animals in the world of agriculture. It could be used to treat an illness that you or I have. It could be used to edit an embryo, in which case you're actually going to affect a future child. So each one of them has a slightly different set of concerns, right? The public's fascination has been around the designer baby. And that's going to be the least likely, or at least frequent use of this technology for the foreseeable future. Its biggest use is going to be in agriculture. It's going to be about changing animals or plants so that they can better survive in a changed climate or where they emit fewer things that are problematic environmentally. We've already used other forms of genetic engineering to create a pig that releases less phosphorus in its waste, which would improve runoff to our lakes. There's a salmon that was changed so that it could be grown faster and in enclosed tanks so you don't have to ship it across the country and use all those transportation resources. For adults like us, this technology has enormous potential. We've already seen it now treat sickle cell disease. And this is a terrible disease because it creates incredible pain and in past years has led to early death. And because it's mostly in the African American community, it's also hitting people that are disproportionately already disadvantaged in the healthcare system. We now have the ability to correct the problem, and the person with sickle cell disease no longer suffers from these things. But there's a huge dilemma here. It is incredibly expensive. And it takes sophisticated facilities and tremendous amounts of money. And that leads to several things. It's very hard to get insurance to want to step up and pay for these incredibly expensive therapies. The second problem is in West Africa, the situation is even more dire. And it's almost impossible to imagine in many of those countries being able to mount this kind of technological and economic feat. So one of the ethics issues is, should we go ahead and continue to develop therapies that are going to be out of reach for most people? And if we are, how much should we be devoting ourselves to finding a way to make them accessible to everybody despite that?
Farmers essentially have been crossbreeding, and that is actually genetically engineering.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for millennia, and people are comfortable with that. And so you talked about science and technology, and the tools today allow us to do that at a more efficient rate. And so is there a double standard that are kind of antiquated farming techniques going back thousands and tens of thousands of years, those are okay, but now instead of using a shovel and putting your hands in the dirt and you're using these genetic tools in a lab, that's somehow bad?
Yes, absolutely. Part of it is familiarity. I do a biotech brunch for my students every year where I have them come to my home and have a brunch made of biotechnology affected kinds of foods. And I serve them things like cheeses and yogurts because fermentation is a form of biotechnology, as well as trying to find some genetically edited. Well, actually, most of the corn we have is genetically engineered. And so I serve them something that has corn in it. So yeah, some of it is a double standard just based on familiarity and not recognizing how much of this has already happened. Part of it, I think, though, is efficiency. Sometimes we use technology in a fashion that makes it possible for us to do things so much more easily that many more people think to do it. And now what used to be a personal question becomes a societal question. And that's because of the efficiencies. And I think that's part of what happens with genetic engineering. As we get better at it and it gets easier, and genome editing has certainly been a leap forward in our capacity and the ease, we suddenly begin to worry much more about how many other things we might want to change. And are we really comfortable with changing that many things? You know, and suddenly that question becomes much bigger for us and part of a larger set of concerns about human control over ourselves and the environment, and not just a question of a single lab or a single product.
Talk to us a little bit more about what are the issues around designer babies? Should I have the right to choose what my baby can and should look like, how tall he or she could be, how smart, if we could figure out what gene codes for that?
You said, do I have the right to control how my child looks or any other trait? And I'm going to tell you that you already have that right and you already use it. When you pick a partner with whom to have a child, you are also picking something about what that child is going to be. When you use a sperm bank and you pick a donor, you're already making some decisions about that child. It's probabilistic, but what if you could really be absolutely sure of what you're going to get? Does that mean everybody rushes forward and said, well, let me do it now that I know there's no risk? That's the fear. The reality is that there'll never be no risk. First, editing is not 100% perfect, and there can be unintended effects on other parts of the genome. Second, when you edit an embryo, which already has multiple cells, you may succeed in editing some of the cells, but not all of them. And finally, editing one thing doesn't tell you how it's going to manifest in a live-born child because it's against a backdrop of a whole other set of genetic traits and so-called epigenetic traits, the things that affect how the genes operate. So genome editing is nowhere close to making it possible to truly design a baby. So the phrase itself gives people the impression of a power we don't have and we are nowhere near having. The question for the moment has not been about whether it should be forbidden to use the technology to choose a child with the traits that you like, the height, the complexion. It's really about whether or not it should be used when you know that there's a genetic trait that is highly penetrant. It will express itself against almost any other genetic background, and it's truly devastating, results in incredible pain and a very short life. There are some genes like that. They tend to be relatively rare, but there are thousands of them. And if you've got parents who know that they are at risk of passing this on, or they know that an embryo has the trait, and they still want to bring that embryo to term, or they still want to have children for themselves that are genetically related, this provides an option to delete that devastating trait. I think of technology as a force of good. It needs to be controlled, but science is an avenue to improving our lives and improving the neighbors' lives and improving the health of the planet. I can't get past that optimism.